everyone. Welcome to Weekly Open. I am Brian here with Don and Cred, and we're brought to you by FTX. Go to weeklyopen.com/FTX, where you can trade today directly from one asset to the other, track your portfolio. Of course, there's zero fees on everything that you're doing. You can DCA back in if you think the bottom's in, or whatever you've got going on, you can do it on the FTX app. We are thankful to them for being our partners. Once again, weeklyopen.com/FTX. Cred, Don, how's it going?
Good.
You're on the left.
Oh, I am on the left. I didn't know
Yeah.
politics was a part of this, but fine. I mean, if we're going to go straight into it. Yeah, pretty good. Monthly close upon us, more or less. I'm sure there's, some stuff to talk about setups-wise there. But overall, there's consensus in a week in Austin, Texas. Going to go hang around, lurk around, see what the state of crypto is like when altcoins have gone to zero. So that'll be a fun one to explore. But, generally doing well. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well too. I might see you there. I'm hoping to sneak in for a couple days. Don, what about yourself? Yeah. What about you, Don?
Beyond that Cred is going to consensus, which is the most bearish thing I've ever heard. I'm doing quite well. I mean, price wise and like positioning wise, I feel like I kind of screwed up a little bit, but then again, like that's just trading. Life-wise, everything is good.
Good. So we did get our one more weekly close read, so I don't remember the count. Do you have that handy there? 9. So 9 weekly red candles in a row. And then naturally, we're getting upside on a day where U.S. markets are closed, but futures are open. Yeah. Does that make y'all less trusting of upside here?
Kind of. I mean, for me, this is still like the thing is, we're basically gonna have the monthly close tomorrow, right? So this is all, in my opinion, monthly close shenanigans. People trying to push it up beyond support. This was like basically the play that I wanted to make. I just thought it would happen earlier, where you just kind of try to push up price above monthly support. Going into the monthly is something that happens very, very often. You can kind of go back and look at that. Price history-wise, happens very, very regularly. Just to print a nice candle makes bulls more aggressive. I don't know why it works, but it does work. It's been working for years now. But we still only have one day, right? And given that this is like on a closed market, while the S&P is at resistance, does make me like less trusting. Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense to kind of be a little bit more cautious the closer we get to the actual markets opening.
Cred, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. It's obviously exciting because the candles are green, at least on some time frame, which is nice. I'm not sure whether I saw, for example, Chimp argue that this is like a market structure break, and like Sue retweeted it and so on. That may be the case depending on what time frame you use, but the fact that we're still like here, basically, being generous with how I've drawn that box, like, it's poking above, I think, the range that Don had on an intraday basis, or at least it's right into resistance there, which is interesting. But for me, really, in terms of trading signals that matter, they're going to come from the monthly time frame. And it looks like the monthly time frame is going to close as a breakdown, right? Like if we take the lowest close as our kind of support extreme or range low, whatever, this, unless there's some miraculous rescue in the next 1 day and 10 hours, this is going to count as a monthly time frame breakdown. And it makes sense to be defensive until that changes. And as I've said multiple times, we had a mirror, if you want to be bullish about a bearish close, make of that what you will. We had a mirror example of that at resistance, where you had a breakout, which should have sent price higher, ultimately didn't do shit, traded back within the range, and it was a one-way street. So if you want to be bullish a close that looks like shit, you would reasonably expect a similar type of development where, just like the break here didn't lead to anything, you want the downside break not to lead to anything either, eventually trade back in the range, and then it's hopefully a similar type of one-way street, at least into this, where a lot of the reversion targets lie in the mid 40s. But if it's a pure range trade, you're looking for the other side as your ultimate target. So like crappy monthly close becomes less crappy if in the next month or two we don't disappear, and actually, just like here, you have a few wicks, a few awkward months, but ultimately the market didn't go anywhere. You want to see 28, 27s, around 30 hold if this is going to be like a bottom,
Yeah, in terms of what's bullish, I did have, I guess, one look, and sorry, I am remote, so all my screen sharing stuff is weird. But the only thing I can really point at is that we broke a 20-day trend that is, to be fair, a very difficult trade to make, because it can be very choppy, but it is kind of your first sign of trend reversal without getting through that box or through the levels, like you mentioned there, Cred. I'm being told I have robot voice. I'm not sure if it's actual robot voice or just not great quality.
People are just used to your buttery up-only mic audio quality.
Yeah,
You sound fine.
sorry. I brought 4 microphones with me and 2 different ways to interface with the computer, and none of them worked. 3 if you count the one I left at home, which was a brand new option that didn't work even before I left. So nevertheless, it's just the way it goes for me.
Yeah, people are complaining. Okay. It's not bad. It's just,
well, the prices are down, but now there's one up day and they finally had capitulated, so they have reason to be upset. And I
meow.
I think I feel like this price action is just trying to punish. Still, you could point back to summer 2021, where on the left side of the screen, where we broke up for a couple of days and then went and had another 20-30 days of pain before the actual reversal occurred. I feel like that's so likely with any of this. Like, very little is going to be required for people to, doubt their bullish conviction, sell into this strength because they were in a low time frame trade and it starts to turn, so they give it a boost in the reverse direction. We could certainly get a deep mean reversion, but I don't think it's one that you just like hang your hat on forever,
Yeah, I agree. I mean, generally, we're still in the same situation. The funny thing is, right, and I mean, if you just look at the weekly, right, we're in the same situation that we were last week. We haven't really moved at all. We're still trading below the weekly range, but sentiment is very, very different now than it was just a couple of days ago, right? Like, this is why, and I mean, just timing it wrong on my part is just basically, I mean, like a wrong trade as well. But this is why, like, this is what I was looking at. Like, the moment you put in a green candle, people reverse course. And I think that actually has, like, whenever this kind of stuff happens, people still doubt it at first. And then the higher it goes, the more certain they become that they missed the bottom, and the more likely they are to FOMO in. And then at that point, it oftentimes reverses, right? So if you look at the weekly, Cred just drew in the range low that I was talking about. It could easily, I think, run towards 34K here and still be bearish, right? We could easily retest that. It'd be still a bearish range retest, but the market would feel a lot different, right? People would actually be back bullish again. But that's just how bear markets trade, right? They give you hope and then they rug pull it. So I could see that happen. I don't think it's going to happen before the monthly close, so I don't mind having closed my trade, just based on the fact that I always just gave it a little bit of time. And when that kind of time, like, there's only so much time that you can give a trade if you have like a time limit, and mine was kind of reached, so I closed it. And I mean, we did nuke immediately after, but recovered that. But yeah, I think in general we're in the exact same position that we were last week. Nothing's changed. It just feels different because we actually have had 3 days in a row that are green, instead of just either chop or just straight up 9 weeks of red candles.
We went from super cycle to like, can we get a green week, please? Even if it's into resistance, just give us some reprieve, It's quite funny. Yeah. I agree with you on the weekly time frame stuff. I still think like the largest move will likely be signaled by the monthly time frame, just because it's been the best time frame throughout this consolidation. On the weekly basis, the levels obviously align. As I've said before, like, my view hasn't changed, unsurprisingly. I want to see some evidence that the ranges are going to do something other than break down and trade lower. And the first area where that can take place is this kind of, 32, 33K range low, where if you close above that on a weekly basis, like the monthly time frame starts to look more acceptable. And, maybe there's some sort of rotation to be had there on the daily or weekly time frame. My issue would be, presumably, and the reason why I'm expressing some caution, that if this monthly closes like this, and then the market rallies into this monthly and weekly area, that's technically a bearish retest at that point of high time frame structure. So if you're going to be long into that, it has to be like a very kind of hit and run type of position, because your expectation until proven otherwise has to be that it's a monthly retest of resistance that's more than likely going to close below it, unless you then get confirmation on the monthly time frame, whatever else. Like if the monthly closes like this and it starts to rally like into this cluster, into this consolidation, that's a bearish retest, and I don't like being long into those unless it's really obvious that something else is going on. In the interim, I was talking to Don about this daily range I've got when the market was here yesterday, and I said this kind of looks like a stealth bottom. And the reason I say that is you take the lowest close in the range as your support, and this, even though, and the reason I say it just looks like a stealth bottom is because it kind of closed below the level, and then you have this like sort of weekendy type of pump, whatever you want to, have whatever label you want to put on it. It's still then closed above the range. So technically speaking, it's a failed breakdown on the daily time frame. Now, yeah, it's got all the caveats of weekends and Memorial Day and whatnot, but like structurally, that was at least something yesterday, and now it's approaching, if the same range is going to stay intact, my resistance at least is a tiny bit higher. Like if you want to nibble at this and day trade this and whatever else, I think that's reasonable. I just think that the monthly range breakdown signal is worth taking seriously, because it's such a good time frame. And for me, at least in terms of like trades with decent holding periods and decent enough conviction, the long trade becomes available either much lower if it pukes and the breakdown sticks, or if there's clear evidence that the breakdown isn't sticking. And for me, late boomer that I am, that evidence will almost certainly have to be on the monthly time frame, because anything else, I'll be kind of buying resistance, hoping it's not resistance. I'd be comfortable even waiting. Yeah, I mean, look, I'd even be comfortable waiting for like a monthly close higher, closer to 40, if I then know that this wasn't accepted and I can reasonably target the highs, if not the range high. Like I'm fine waiting a couple months for that, if that's what it takes.
Yeah, but what are the numbers on the right side? I can't read them on my.
Oh, sorry. So that's 35K, 37K. It's just the candle of last summer on the monthly time frame, and I've just taken the open and close of that structure. So on the Coinbase chart, 35K. Yeah, 37K is the monthly range low. And if we close below that, I'm going to have to assume that's resistance. And if next month closes above it, that's actually a good swing long setup where, you've got something other than the market broke down, but I'm kind of buying it into resistance anyway. But there is a trade there, and there is that kind of month-end reversion trade, or even early month pump, bearish retest pump, whatever you want to call it. But like if I want conviction and I want the higher time frames to align, the earliest they can do that is actually the next monthly close. And that might be late, might be not. I'm comfortable waiting and seeing,
I mean, for me in general, if I look at the weekly time frame, right, you can, what I've been doing, basically, I've been trading the monthly time frame, or like trying to anticipate how it's going to move. And that's been like, I mean, just break even trade basically. So what I can do now is either wait until I have confirmation, like you said, or, and I mean, I'm screen sharing right now, so you can just toggle over, just kind of to show what I mean. Or I just wait for the weekly to the exact same thing. And Cred mentioned this very briefly. It's one of the easiest setups to play in a range. It always just kind of sounds unrealistic, but it almost always plays out, which is just you get a range breakout that doesn't materialize either direction, and then you target the other side of the range, right? So in this case, and I mean I can say this because I legitimately, this was the reason why I sold like near 60K. I looked at this range breakout and I was bullish during, like, this is the top, right? And I was bullish there. I was like, it doesn't really make much sense for me to sell anything because we just broke the range to the upside. And then the moment we faded below it, I was like, okay, this is fucked. Like, this should not have happened if there was any strength. I'm going to be cautious until we take out the high again, right? And now we can do the same thing. Like, you can either wait for the monthly time frame, obviously, give it some more time, or you can do just the exact same thing, which is like, you wait for this to deviate back into the range, and then you have an invalidation down here, and you have a target up here, which seems unrealistic now, right? But I don't think it's too unrealistic if we can manage to get back in the range just based on the technicals, right? So what you then do is you have your invalidation, you have your target is multiples away from your invalidation, and you can just trade it relatively easily, and you don't have to necessarily wait for the monthly to kind of support that thesis. I think that's like just the weekly's been good enough to kind of stick your neck out. And if that plays out, it's a pretty nice trade. It's just like a very, very long range, basically. But until that happens, the only way for me to play this, because given we're just a few percent away from weekly resistance, right? There's like 3 to 4% away. There's nothing for me to capture here on a longer time frame basis, other than this like reverse play on the monthly that I closed, given we have 1 day to kind of close it, and it's unrealistic to hope for a close above 37k, which I would.
So impatient, Don. Should have just waited, bro.
Yeah, I mean that sometimes works, sometimes doesn't, right? And it feels more like a gamble than anything. And whenever it starts feeling like a gamble, I just start closing out stuff. But that could just be me coping. But yeah, there's finally like a really, really good setup opportunity there. It just depends on whether that actually sets up or not. Because if what you would have to realistically expect, right, just from given how everything, like all the charts look, you would have to expect this to happen, right? As like a sane person, you would have to expect this. Given market structure, given we're consolidating below the range, given everything that's happened in the last few weeks, you would have to expect that this is just a temporary relief setup into lower. But obviously, if that is proven wrong, all the bears are offside. And I think in general in crypto, when you get a rally that a bunch of people are offsides on, you can reach high prices relatively fast because people just stop selling, and then there's nothing to buy. And a bunch of people on the sidelines that originally believed, okay, crypto is going to be the big thing, and always will believe that the moment price goes up, right? It's a funny thing in crypto, like prices go down, people like this is a Ponzi, prices go up, people like this is the future. And it's like, that makes these FOMO rallies so strong because people like have this intrinsic kind of fear of missing the future of money, basically. But they're also, when they're bearish, they're like, fucking hell, there's so much we don't know yet. And like that kind of double thing where you have like on the one side they're extremely bullish and the other side they're like extremely bearish when it goes down, just makes for really nice FOMO rallies. So I think like if we get back above 34k on the weekly time frame, it's going to be a big play to be made. Even if you're like conservative, I think at that point you have to target like 46k that region. So
yeah, that's where a lot of the reversion stuff lies. I'm just wondering if it sounds like extreme cope. It's like the monthly's breaking down, the weekly's breaking down, but if it doesn't break down, that's when it fucking send it. You know, it's like at face value, stuff looks like it's breaking down, and that's why I agree with Don. It's worth waiting those 3, 4, 5, 6, 7% to get to finally, after 9 weeks or whatever it is, get some good evidence that maybe it's not going to be the same, and then there's a setup to be had, even if on the weekly, monthly, whatever. But I think those extra few percentage points really shift the probabilities, and they're worth waiting for, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think everything you just described, you could have done the exact same description and did in mid 2021. And I think actually your whole point about like people don't want to miss it, I think that's what took Bitcoin to new highs rather than just having a lower high consolidation there. We're basically saying, can the same thing happen again? Can you get so many people in cash, so many people offsides, yet still willing to buy to push it back to the very top of that range, or even to new highs? The big difference is that the state of the rest of the world is much different now than it was a year ago. But otherwise, it's almost the exact same setup, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. And I mean,
yeah, even that on the
frame.
weekly time frame worked, right? Like there was just as a quick example, I'll screen share this very quickly. And I was talking to Don about this at the time. I think I might have tweeted it as well. I was still using this level as my range low, And this was like a premiere type of trap setup. I was talking to you about it as Ledger at the time because I was just traveling, and I'm like, this is a good weekly signal. And what makes it better is that I'm not there to take it, you know. But this is like the bottom of the range on a closing basis. You have a bunch of support, a close below, and then a subsequent close above, and a very nice kind of engulfing candle in the process. And you know, that's about as clear range breakdown, or failed range breakdown, I should say, that you get. And yeah, you might feel bad if you weren't like buying at the low, and you know it's down at 29 and closed at 35. You feel like you're late, but as Don says, you usually get a nice kind of high time frame spring when that happens. So I think, you know, applying similar logic, like weekly close back above 32 or thereabouts, I'd expect it to fill in a lot of these consecutive weeks and trade closer towards where some of the candle bodies are. But that's worth waiting for, in my opinion, because this right here is, again, yeah, I mean, as I said, intraday it may be pumpable. There's certainly enough volatility to make some decisions, but higher time frame, at least a fucking green weekly, please, right? Like, we're not asking for a lot from this market in order to ascertain some evidence of reversion, strength, move back into the range, whatever. And people who've been trying to front run that for weeks now haven't had like the best time. So I'm comfortable getting a worse entry than them if it means a higher probability entry than them, you know?
Yeah, I'm going to show a chat from Connor here that everyone should be listening to GCR. More importantly, short is currently the consensus trade. And I think this is what Don was getting to earlier, is what does it actually take for short to no longer be the consensus trade? And the answer is not much. So what we're trying to say here is, like, unless you snipe that bottom, then what do you have left in this move before short is no longer the consensus trade and you start getting people potentially offsides again? Don, you're doing squiggles right now, and I always enjoy those.
Yeah.
And this is the type of outcome that could occur, right? This is if you took 2021 and like full mirrored it.
Yeah.
But
so
it's the
you mirrored this. Yeah.
Yeah, the same concept where it's like, okay, that one little up move, if that happens now, if that's enough to get the short consensus trade to no longer be the case, and now it's like people are looking for bullish mean reversion, you crush their souls with the next move down, right? Like, because they get chopped up once again. And I don't think you can discount that. I think this is a market that loves to punish. So it's something that I think you have to be careful of.
Yeah,
But it's
it
worth
feels
watching
very
sentiment.
similar. Yeah, it
Yeah.
feels very, very similar. Sentiment got really, really bearish in here. Then it flipped on the breakout. I still remember all of this. And then when it broke down here, it was just like, okay, we're going back to 14K. This time around, we basically had that, okay, we're going to 14K sentiment the entire consolidation. So it's been much, much bearish, much, much more bearish than we were back here. Very similar to this down move, actually, which, I mean, if we get that again, the sentiment is going to be hilariously bearish. So I'm not entirely sure if we're going to just mirror this again or not, but it's interesting. It feels very similar. It looks pretty similar. And in general, like, something that I've noticed in the recent years is that most of the time when you like start going sideways, like for longer periods of time, after like crashes, like big time frame kind of sideways movements, you go up pretty heftily after. It's the same thing here. There's a good chance that the same thing is going to play out here if it doesn't just completely collapse, which, I mean, is obviously possible. But you look at these kind of down moves, right, and they're all very, very quick. Like in the recent times, what we've had is you have like a down move, you have like a little bit of a bounce maybe, but then like you get just straight down, and then you go sideways and reverse back up. And it's very, very rare that you get like a crash into sideways, like a long time of sideways, and then just straight up crash again. Like, for some reason recently, it's all been just like straight up 50% crashes, and then it's been grinding and up again. So like, I don't want to be too bearish here. I don't want to be too bullish, just given the high time frames. Like I said, they all look like shit. Like the weekly looks like shit, the monthly looks like shit. There's no talking, like there's no way around this. So if you're like trading the high time frames, there's no reason to be bullish. But also, like, we're going sideways after 50% move to the downside. So like if you're starting to short, just kind of feels like very, very late. Like there was so much time that you could have shorted this. I don't really understand why you'd want to be doing it down here.
We're a panel of people neither short nor long.
Yeah, and I'm coping about it.
Yeah, well, because you almost got like the Pico, are close to the Pico bottom, right? Yeah, I would actually feel more bullish for mean reversion if the market was freaking open, like more broadly. That's what gives me a significant amount of disbelief. I do want to. I want to talk about if this outcome occurs, so that this is another range bottom, and the Dawn kind of 30K to 60K crab walk happens for 2 years, as previously discussed. Is it even possible for alts to play along? Because in my mind, the only way that Bitcoin can have that strength is if flows go from altcoins on a relative basis to Bitcoin, because that's where a lot of the buying comes from.
I think what we can see in altcoins, and this is like funny to witness, but like the emergence of like GCR and like the shorting the altcoins to zero thing has gotten a lot of people like bullish on the idea of shorting altcoins, I guess, which I think makes like you have what happens when that happens, right? When a bunch of people start shorting altcoins is you have massive down moves, then it goes sideways, and people are like, holy shit, this was like I could have made so much money on the down move. And then they start shorting every single bounce that they get, and then this thing squeezes 20, 50, 100, 200%, and then just goes straight back down, right? So I think you can have 50%, 100% rallies on select altcoins where it's just short squeeze, right? Just short squeezes all over. So anything that's heavily shorted, I think, is a really, really bad play on the short side in the altcoin land. But in general, I think you're right that like if we get a bullish Bitcoin movement, altcoins are probably not going to go along as strongly as we've been used to in like the last year or two. Just makes sense to me because like the crypto interest in the world isn't like retail interest in crypto isn't high. It's not necessarily like there's a lot of money to be like new money flowing into the altcoins. But I think a bunch of people are shorting altcoins now, which is gonna end poorly probably for a bunch of them, not all of them. And you see these kind of short squeezes on just select few, right? You see these like 25, 50, 100% rallies that immediately full retrace on just a few. So like it's basically you're shorting something and then there's a good chance that you just get completely blown up. But there's also like if you luck out and you're not one of the ones that get squeezed, there's a good chance that your altcoin goes down 50% against Bitcoin.
You can screen share, by the way, my thing to that effect, Ledger, where I've got AVAX USDT on Binance, and you can see where the open interest kind of really started to climb relative to price, right? Yeah. Like this whole move up where open interest more than basically doubled from the lows, essentially, you know? So as far as timing and those trades, and because the basic mechanism is something goes down a lot, people sell it, futures get really aggressive while the market kind of chills out. Staying short becomes expensive, and you kind of just start bleeding out, and your liquidation moves closer as you're making exorbitant funding payments, if it's the consensus trade, to hold a position that isn't moving anywhere or printing P&L. Liquidation moves closer, and then it just takes a bit of a pop, bit of a bounce anywhere, a bit of a push, and a lot of that late open interest ends up acting as fuel for that type of reversionary trade. So, even if you're right on that short, it might like double or something, go up like 20, 30, 40, 50% before ultimately going down to your target. So it's very much a timing thing, as Don mentioned. And there is market structure evidence to suggest that there's some late aggressive positioning in these coins.
Can you describe what this information actually is? It's aggregated stablecoin margin.
Yeah, stablecoin margin contracts. Like I think the Binance OI looks the same for this specific contract. But yeah, a ton of open interest coming in as price is moving down. Yeah, technically there's one long for every short, etc. But I'm sure if we overlaid funding on top of this, it'd be rather obvious which side is being more aggressive. and just in general, stuff like this tends to be pretty, these really steep builds up an open interest where price diverges or doesn't move to the same effect. Tends to be a bit reversionary. So you'd expect some of those shorts to close if they're wrong, or / it's expensive to be short / if price doesn't go down. And then the chart would look like this bit going up, the price obviously as the shorts are closing, which become orders to buy, obviously. And so mechanistically, there is some sort of setup for a bit of upside in alts should the market play ball. That was just a compliment. Don's compliment with an E, not compliment. I'll never compliment him. Just adding some data.
Yeah. No, that's super interesting, and we're now big faces. So, well, that does give me an interesting thought process, and I don't know. I haven't really realized that people have been super short alts. I felt like there was more cope going on. But maybe
funding for a lot of them has been really jacked up. Like,
yeah,
especially
it's getting really high.
It's getting pretty bad, and especially the less liquid, like Binance pairs and stuff. They've been crackhead short squeezes on them kind of all weekend because people are paying exorbitant amounts for a market that after 50, 60, 70% moves down, they were like, oh, maybe the trend is down. I'll short everything and pay a lot of money for the privilege. So that never ends well.
It's funny because that happens every single cycle. I still remember in 2018 where I was like, all of these altcoins are going to zero. And then people like insulted me for like a year until they like suddenly, all of a sudden, like it just took like an 80-90% drop to be like, oh yeah, shit, this guy's right. Let me short. And I was like, oh, fucking hell. And then it short squeezes, right? And that's the thing. Like these short squeezes, they don't have to mean that the trend reverses, but you're still going to get wrecked if you're shorting, right? Like even if price goes lower after, like in general, after you've sold or like after you started shorting, if it goes up 100% during the time you're shorting, you're most likely liquidated, right? So you're not going to be happy about your shorts in general, and I feel like that's what people don't understand.
You're not going to be very happy if you've been liquidated. Market advice from Don.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like, what are you doing, right? Like if you're starting to short something that's down 90%, it's like you're gambling most of the time, right? Which is fine if you're like doing it with smaller balances. But what most people do, most like newer participants anyway, they're like, okay, I lost 80% on this. Let me just like crack up the leverage, short this so that I like when this goes to near zero, I'm break even again. And it's like, no, this is just not how it works.
So yeah. All right. Well, you've got me interested now. The short interest makes me feel like maybe the squeeze is more real than previously expected.
Let's bait him in, Don. We've almost got
it. Yeah.
I mean, this is for altcoins. This is not for Bitcoin, right?
And so I showed weekly Bitcoin on there. The 200-week moving average is still around 22K. The 20-week, which in my mind Bitcoin needs to be above the 20-week to be remotely bullish, is not until like 38K in a macro sense. And meanwhile, the dollar, or the Dixie rather, is in its beginning its third potential down week. One of the things I find interesting is if you had showed me this chart in isolation on the Dixie, I would have thought Bitcoin was actually much higher, based on the size of this breakdown in the Dixie. And we kept talking about this whole thing being a dollar move, so it makes me confused as to whether now we have a Bitcoin problem or is the market just not believing here in terms of what's going on with the dollar. Especially when, if I don't know if y'all paid attention to legacy markets, the NASDAQ like super engulfed the previous 2 weeks of downside and ended like just turbo green up only style candle, and Bitcoin wasn't as strong. So I just don't know, like, are we lagging, or is this basically short closings in traditional markets? I'm just still pretty torn.
The interesting part is that what basically happened was that we decoupled, right, while the market was still open.
Yeah,
that was pretty obvious to see, where it's like the Bitcoin basically started dumping while the S&P went up, right? And then the S&P closed, and all that happened over the weekend, like this entire rally basically, was just taking us back to like some sort of coupling again, which is really interesting, right? Because you basically capitulated a bunch of people because you broke the correlation, and then you recoupled the entire thing again over the weekend, making people bullish, basically saying, okay, yeah, Bitcoin went up even though the markets were closed. I think it's probably just like if you kind of add both together, it's just we're probably still correlated at the end of the day. And I don't think there's going to be like a major decoupling to the upside or to the downside, but I could be wrong on that front. And like on the S&P or NASDAQ front, both charts look relatively similar. We just ran into resistance, right? Like it's a bounce from support. And like this is what annoys me the most, right? Where I was like, I was bullish at the bottom of the S&P because I looked at this chart and was like, okay, everything's going to go up, right? And then I bought Bitcoin and Bitcoin just didn't play ball. And then I closed before it caught back up again, which is just sad, but is what it is. But yeah, I would be like, I don't really see a reason to be aggressive here, right? Because what we basically done was like catch up on the S&P a little bit during the weekend. And it's not even that we're like super strong on the Bitcoin front, given that the S&P, like this is like the 18th, 19th of May, right? High, and we're trading above that. And then you look at Bitcoin, and that is basically exactly in that range, right? Like it's not trading above it. So it's like, I wouldn't say, okay, we're like stronger at all. It's basically just the same, if not a little bit weaker.
I was going to say the recent evidence isn't good, i.e. strong week in indices, weak in crypto. So, you know, if you're trading that 1-to-1, maybe you're not like wrong or wrecked, but you're not having like a good time. So, I mean, depends on where you fall in that discussion. You could make a very reasonable case that that's indicative of crypto specific weakness or crypto flows in general being bearish. The fact that you've been tracking all the downside tick for tick and like none of the upside, that's, you know, as far as recency goes, that's not great. But I can see in general the correlation trade and coupling, decoupling, which side are you tracking? That's kind of becoming quite noisy, in my opinion, which is why, again, maybe lazily, maybe wisely, I'd like to think the latter. I'm kind of deferring rather to the higher time frame stuff because there's been a lot less signal and a lot more noise in the correlation, and expecting like a big shift, especially like an upside shift. I don't think that's supported by the evidence. If anything, if you came to me and you said, you know, I think that the downside decoupling is more likely, as in, you know, we dump harder than stocks and don't pump as hard. The recent evidence supports that a lot more. So I guess we'd need like this week or next week or something to restore that relationship. But what we had was we go down with the S&P and we go up with the S&P, and we moved from that to we go down with we go down with risk, but we don't go up with risk. And that's a shift that's come in kind of after the Luna debacle and, you know, in the last week or two. And the trend isn't in the right direction as far as that goes.
I do think the Terra Luna impact is a big part of that, where structurally, like some people just got taken out, right? And they could be having redemptions, like if they're writing letters to LPs, or even if it's just their own money, like they're trying to consider kind of the state of things for their funds, and like there could be a lot of reverberation from an event like what happened with Terra Luna, and we may still be kind of over minimizing the impact of that on large money, not necessarily institutional, because I don't think many pure institutions were in Terra Luna, but a lot of crypto money, and there's a lot of crypto money, you know, a lot of big crypto money that was in that, and I don't know that we should downplay the relative trade there that you just mentioned, Cred. It wouldn't surprise me for us to underperform legacy bounces. Not that that's what I'm rooting for. I still think that we could range for months here. Like I don't personally think that the push to like the range high at 60K is very likely at all. I do think you could get a violent short squeeze like into the 40Ks. But I think in all likelihood, we spend a year or more, probably all of 2022, without any real clear movement. in the upwards direction. Am I just coping?
I mean, there's good reason why you'd think that, I think. And I mean, like I said, and this is the thing that Cred mentioned earlier as well. Like, if you're saying, okay, yeah, we're going to have like this and that upside, if we finally manage to go above resistance, it's like major cope. Like if you're on the bullish side of things, and I count myself in that as well. But it's like, you should be violently bearish here just based on the charts, be like fucking out short everything every time it goes to resistance, and then change your view if it actually proves you that it has strength, not the other way around, right? And then I'm always arguing the other way around just because I want it to be bullish. But at the end of the day, like, there's good reason, I think, why you're like more on the cautious side of things, just based on the fact we're trading below trading ranges, we're trading below monthly, weekly support. So it makes sense to just kind of be like, okay, this could do whatever, but it's probably going to be bearish or neutral. And then once you see strength, you can flip or whatever. But I don't think it's unreasonable what you're saying.
That only works in the downside, right? Like, if you think about in an uptrend, no one says, "Oh, well, I'll be bearish if it falls below support," because you just say you're bullish, right? And then if it falls below support, you're like, "Oh, well, actually, this looks like a piece of shit." But because everyone's got like spot holdings, they're net long, or their followers are net long, whatever. When the market's down, the way you phrase the same ideas changes completely, right? So you don't say like, this is a downtrend, this is bearish. You're like, oh, well, if you focus on the other side of the coin, it's like, if it reclaims, if it shows strength, it's going to do X, Y, Z. So you always engage the counterfactual when the trend is down. But when the trend is up, all your phrasing is like, oh, yeah, well, it looks good, send it. It's holding all levels. You don't talk, every time you're in an uptrend and you do a live stream, you don't say, well, you know what? If it loses the support, watch out. You just focus on the fact that it's above support, right? So if you were consistent, you would focus on the fact that it's below support, at resistance, whatever, when the trend is down. But we've got these like monkey brains where green button, always good, only good. So when the trend is up, we just focus on that. When the trend is down, you look at every situation which the trend could be up. I mean, it makes sense from like a risk reward, whatever type of point of view. But just it's careful you have to be careful when browsing Twitter, and people use very obfuscatory wording to express what should be rather simple ideas. Like when you read a tweet saying, if it reclaims X, it's bullish, that may sound like a bullish tweet, but it's technically bearish, right? Because what that tweet means is it's below the level which they think would be constructive for the chart. And therefore you have to be bearish because they're literally saying in that tweet, my bullish conditions haven't been met. So that's neutral at best and probably bearish if anything, right?
Yeah, I mean, they're basically giving you an invalidation for a short
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Well said.
Yeah. Because yeah, sorry, go ahead.
It's probably dangerous to quote anything that Suzu says, but considering the PSYOPs potential. But do y'all remember back when he talked about how he's learned that markets are really just a lot of fat people trying to get through a small door? The analogy that he gave there.
Oh, I like that analogy a lot, yeah.
Yeah, and therefore market conditions require the market to exist in a way for all those fat people trying to engineer how they can get through the small door. So if you have a lot of big money that does not have like an overly bullish midterm outlook, then what do you try to do in order to enable yourself to get out the door? And one of those is to use less money to try to prop to the mid-range and distribute and suck cash back in so that you can have enough room to then get out the door in a more healthy manner.
Can we just get bigger doors?
I guess they could get a little bigger over time. I don't know, but you see what I mean? Like, I feel like it would be beneficial for big money trying to reduce their risk overall to float the market on relatively low volume a little bit higher to give a better distribution location.
The question that I have in that kind of scenario is, who do you sell it to at like 40, 45K? Because like
me, I'll be buying confirmation.
Because what I think is that no new retailer is gonna come in at 44, 45K. I could see like new people come in at like 60K, 70K. It's like, I think if you push it to 44, 45, 50K, the only people that you can actually sell to is other rich people that you might be able to make FOMO if you want to be selling it to anyone. But that's always like that argument is just like one doesn't really help anyone because it's just really, really hard to judge how sentiment is gonna be. But I feel like given the global situation that we're in and everything, it's like really, really hard to reignite retail FOMO, right? I think retail's pretty much been wrecked in crypto. Again, just like they did in 2018. A bunch of people bought garbage NFTs and they're starting to get completely wrecked now. I mean, NFTs took a little bit longer, but I mean, if you go through the NFT landscape, it's just like complete mayhem, which I mean, I kind of saw coming. I was like, I think no one's really gonna be trading NFTs during like when you have war and everything going on. Took a while to play out, but I think it's playing out now. And then you also have like the altcoins. I mean, Shiba, Doge, both of them I think are down like 80% or something. Like retail is completely wrecked again. And usually when that happens, it takes a couple of years, right, for them to kind of get back in. And so I don't think you're going to be able to sell to retail. If anything, like this is a PvP market where you can sell to. Like if you're a rich person that wants to sell and you want to make price go up, to be able to sell, you're going to have to find another rich person to buy off of you. And I'm not entirely sure if that's going to be so easy. If anything, I think like if you buy that much that you can make it go up, you might as well just make it go all the way and then see where it goes from there. But I mean, it's just my feeling.
So Mekan gives a point that I think is reasonable. So if they need BTC to go up for alts to go up, then they can get rid of their alt bags, which makes the range theory a bit more realistic. And I think that that outcome makes a little more sense. Like if you keep Bitcoin either ranging or in a mild uptrend, then the speculation can move to alts a bit, which gives you the ability to distribute on that front. And then which would you rather be bag holding? Probably BTC.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Then again, I think like most of the altcoins are down so much. I think like if you're expecting an alt season or something like that.
I love when you go to Doge.
Like you look at these, right? And let's not look
what
at
exchange is that?
That's
Coinbase.
Yeah,
oh my
Coinbase.
God.
But like you look at this, right? And Coinbase, typical kind of Coinbase fashion that they added it at
they listed it at the very top.
Yeah, but like you look at Dogecoin, for example, right? This is down 90%. This is basically the exact same thing that, and I mean, I hate that like these charts have like so little history, but
yeah,
like,
you gotta go to like Bitfinex or Kraken or something.
Yeah, I mean, this is good enough, but like we had the exact same thing. Like this is down 90%, right? It went sideways. People are now gonna be like, okay, this went down 90%, and then that was the bottom, so they're gonna be buying now. But my argument is, right, like there's not gonna be like this took how long? Like this took good old 2 years at this level to actually play out to the upside, right? So if you're expecting an old season, I'm not entirely sure you're gonna get one. I don't think like if anything, you're gonna have like I said, you're gonna have to push Bitcoin above all-time high to kind of get the next one. I think you might get like a bounce. Dogecoin might go up with Bitcoin if Bitcoin goes up. I think there's a good chance it underperforms while Bitcoin goes up, but it's still probably gonna go up a little bit in USD terms. But I think this is basically completely wrecked, right? Everyone that bought Dogecoin during the mania is just wrecked.
I feel like the equivalent, it used to be Doge below 20 sats was a great buy, even though it could go to like 14 or 15 sats. So you could be down 25%, but you're still in the bullish range before it inevitably goes to 100 sats. We blew all that out of the water, but I think on a dollar basis now it's like 1 penny is kind of that equivalent, and it would be totally reasonable in my opinion for it to go down another 90% from here and get back to a penny, because on a dollar basis, like Doge to a penny was the moon. So it would be reasonable for it now to be the basement floor,
Yeah, I could see it.
We talk about ETH?
Yeah, we haven't talked about ETH. It broke down on the BTC pair. We should talk about ETH.
Yeah. Go on, Don. You've got the BTC chart as well.
Let's talk about the ETH BTC chart first and then go to the other one. So like ETH BTC for me anyway, the interesting chart is actually the monthly, in my opinion, which just kind of looks...
Always is.
Always has been, yeah.
Yeah, which kind of looks like, I mean, this is how Bitcoin looked, right? Where you have like a breakout and it fails, and then you just try to short basically the previous highs. Like you can legitimately like this ETH BTC monthly is just the same setup that you had on Bitcoin on the weekly, right? False breakout, goes back below, and you just short the right side of it. And then where is your target, right? And the monthly, on the monthly time frame, I think like these are weekly levels. I can quickly hide those. On the monthly, you look at this, and your target has to be down here, right? 0.045 would kind of be a nice target on like a head and shoulders front as well. Like this is down like 20% all the way down to there. That's another 20% that makes sense target wise. That would be like, this would make people extremely bearish, I think. But it's still a really, really bullish chart, right? You have a low here, you have a low here, but then you broke that cycle, you went to the upside, and this would be the first real pullback after you've confirmed this bottom, which I think would just still be bullish, right? You could still expect something like this to happen. But obviously, given it's a monthly chart and 20% movements are quite big for people, they don't want to kind of look at this. And I mean, I get it. Like the weekly chart, you can do the same thing, but it's pretty much the exact same. Where it's like you have pretty nice, and this is the monthly level.
It also takes you back to the 200-week moving average, by the way, which is just above 0.04.
Yeah, and this is the same thing. Like you look at this here, whereas like this was where it was rejected before the big run. If it retested, that's the same level as on the monthly. And like you said, it's the same with the weekly moving average. It broke the whatever this is to the downside.
Crappy diagonal, the inevitably broken down diagonal.
Yeah, and you can make another one. I think you have this one. It's the same thing where it's broken to the downside, and then like a little bit more, like one more push to the downside would make a lot of sense on this chart. So yeah, that's ETH BTC for me. In comparison to that, ETH USD actually isn't like in the worst spot, but it's not really in a good spot either, right? Because what you have basically is you have a bunch of equal lows. I know that this ran by just a little bit, right? So we had like a bunch of equal lows here. This ran those lows like last week, ran those lows by a few dollars and then bounced. But the thing is, whenever you close in these kind of boxes or whatever, what you have to kind of realize is that pretty much this is a resistance because, I mean, it's obviously above price, and this is a support because it's below price, right? So like this, even though like I have it as a green box, right? We're kind
That's
of
why we make the big bucks.
We're running into resistance now. Now, like how these kind of boxes work is that in general you look for a bounce in those areas, but once it actually reaches the top of the box and struggles with it, there's a good chance that you just have support turning into resistance. And then oftentimes you just run into the support again.
It's a good trading setup, right? You wait like 20 weeks to buy the weekly level. It's like down 70%. You finally buy a weekly support and you have to sell it for like 3% higher.
It's the actual meme of the guy with the 1% green candle thing.
Yeah. Face, yeah.
And I mean, this is kind of hilarious, right? Because like we're talking about like a chart that had like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 down weeks. This week, right, this massively bullish week that we have on Bitcoin, where everyone's just freaking out, oh, was this the bottom, whatever. It's not even like reclaimed last week's down move, right? And it's already struggling. So
I have to say, I hate all those wicks. I hated the 3 of them before, and now that we've pressed 2 into the same space, like how do you hold the same level with a wick 5 times in a row? It just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, the same here. Like this, I don't want to be doing business. And I mean, I said this was really good support last week. We bounced a little bit, but I don't like the look of this. I could see this, even if Bitcoin goes up, I could see this not move from the support. So either go sideways, or if Bitcoin dumps, I think this is going to be really, really swift to the downside. So I don't like ETH. If I wanted to buy anything, like in general, like my FOMO feelings are much higher for Bitcoin and for ETH, just based on the fact that ETH BTC kind of doesn't look too good, and ETH USD is just in this weird area, like Ledger said, where we have a bunch of wicks, 5 wicks in this zone. Not really the biggest fan.
Well, you know, this is coinciding with some more merge drama. So there's a lot of questions again about timelines of the merge. Cred, are you familiar with some of that?
I saw people who are short sharing information about it.
Cope.
And it's the classic thing, like when the numbers are going up and when crypto is trending up, everyone knows crypto has emissions, but because inflows surpass outflows by so much, you don't really care about it. Like those numbers get gobbled up by the FOMO, the momentum, and just fresh money. It's only after the market is down like 80%. Everyone's like, oh, by the way, did you know that to sustain the market cap, you need 10 zillion extra dollars coming into the space every day? Where is that money going to come from? It's like, fuck, why didn't you tell me this earlier? You know, or like, why is this only relevant now? And I think there's some similar stuff with basically how the future supply of ETH is as a function of the merge is going to be priced in, and to what extent it's going to be priced in, how to hedge that, and all that type of stuff. I don't know. I feel like it's price wise, it doesn't seem like if you're using that purely as the basis for your trade, I feel like that's got some narrative lag or narrative fatigue to it. It reminds me of EIP 1559 when, you know, as a meme, it was amazing, and this is coming up, therefore keep mooning the market. It was amazing, but then as soon as it was actually, you know, took form, you know, the amount of ETH actually being burned, all of that, like market cycle wise, it was just way too late to be relevant. I feel like if you're tagging onto the trade now as a result of merge concerns, it might be a bit, you know, it's not the best trade, I don't think.
Yeah, I think eventually it does have significant implications. Like the actual supply to ETH does go down a lot. You know, 1559 does burn a lot of ETH, but you can price in high expectations and therefore at least mean reversion before then the thing you expected, you know, actually happens. It has that introduction of lower, you know, amounts of coins on the market and therefore, you know, better for upside. But there's a lot of mean reversion that can happen in the meantime. I think this time ETH has a good chance of being deflationary or at least very low inflation after the merge. I think timing a 6-month or more delay in addition to the years of delays that have occurred already is definitely the type of thing that can like have a negative psychological consequence on people who've been so hopeful for.
Speaking of people being hopeful, look at the FUD Don is cooking up right now.
I mean, it's a good chart. It's terrible. I mean, you can't put these things on monthly, man, and be a rash. Like they're so scary. You put it in linear, it makes it worse.
Babe, new Don just dropped.
I mean, it does look like it's going way down from here if you just look at it on that perspective.
It's like, and the measured move is a delisting from Bitfinex. Okay.
Yeah,
Don, you muted or just being contemplative?
Oh yeah, I was actually muted.
I do think that, I mean, he was busy drawing. He's focused, Cred.
Yeah, you can do one thing at a time.
Yeah. So I think and I love ETH. Like I want to be bullish ETH and all the upside potential that it has. I think it's extremely powerful as a platform, but that doesn't change the fact that it can go to $1,000 and it can go to 0.04 relative to BTC. Yeah. And I think that those are both high enough likelihood outcomes that I want to minimize my exposure until something changes, because you cannot look at this chart, the weekly chart, the daily chart, they all look like garbage. The relative to BTC chart looks like garbage. And when every single chart and every single time frame looks like garbage, maybe it's Pico bottom, but more likely, like you're just going to have some degree of continuation, and it's not the best thing to own. So I don't know.
Yeah, you just hit the ETH chart with like when you're talking to a girl you don't really like, because you've got a great personality, you're a nice girl, you know, you've got a great future ahead of you. There's someone out there for you, but
it's not,
you know.
Yeah. I have orders for ETH in for $1,111, and I'm just gonna let them ride, because I feel like if I get filled at that level, then I just act like that money doesn't exist anymore for a couple years.
And that's nothing like the FUD Don and I were hitting on the Friday show. We
Oh,
did.
yeah.
Oh, we are talking $400.
We were like, this 1K is fake support, and the real one is at like 600 or 700 or something. You know,
that's fine. I'll only be down 50%.
It sounds funny, right? But it's in crypto, that's actually not that bad, right? Like I've seen people be down 80% and then stuff goes up like 50x, and it's like,
Yeah.
It does suck having bought for more expensive than other people. But at the end of the day, like if you're believing that this goes back to all-time highs and higher, if you buy 1K and it goes to 400, I mean, you can either buy more or just be happy, because like from 1K to whatever the target, like I've seen targets of 20K flying around.
10K, which is what Ledger shilled that poor family when we did the stream to save their child or whatever.
I
was
still
like, hold
feel
all
that.
your ETH. No, I'm joking.
I still feel that way. That's what I'm holding for. $1,000 to $10,000, generational wealth achieved. And
Ledger is the plan
congratulations.
B of Ethereum.
So like whether you take this or this, I mean, there's a big difference, right? Because obviously, like you have twice.
You double your generational wealth if you buy the $600 bottom.
You can have 2 kids that go to private school, right?
But the thing is, like, there's a chance that it doesn't go down here, right? And then if you like have high conviction that it goes to like generational wealth, and you miss out on that just because you're greedy to wait for the 400 support instead of the 1K support, and then you have to explain your children why they still like have to go to school and why they still have to work. I mean, that's a rough sell, right? And this is what people kind of don't realize. Like if you have, from an investment perspective, right? Like if this goes to 1K and you don't buy, and then you're like, I want to have this lower support. What you're probably going to do, if it goes to this lower support, you're going to start drawing the 100 range.
Yes.
And you're going to move your bids down lower. And then
I remember when ETH was at 80, this happened, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. People were talking $15.
Yeah, I was like, oh, why buy ETH at 80 when you can buy it for 40?
Good
that
times,
type of stuff.
good times. Yeah. And then I got like basically forced into buying it because Substridum actually publicly shorted with their ICO proceeds. So I kind of fuck it, might as well buy $80, and that actually turned out.
We need some NFT treasuries to do the same thing, right? Like as bottom of bear things. Like we've got a bunch of ETH, we're down 80%. We've just discovered RSI video and we're about to start trading the stack. That'll be a pretty good signal to get back in. But I agree with you. Like if ETH turbo nukes, I think even a conservative long crypto thesis has ETH setting new all-time highs cycle to cycle. And so if that accelerates to the downside, that becomes a pretty good kind of a risk-adjusted opportunity when it comes to crypto and portfolio theory and whatever. Because some of these alts, you're like, oh, well, this is down 90%, it's generational, etc. But there's a pretty high likelihood that it doesn't come back and make USD all-time highs, and it just fades away. Whereas for ETH, like I think any reasonable long crypto thesis has ETH setting new all-time highs. So if it gets really stupid, oversold, cheap, whatever, Nuki, I don't know. That's one of my preferred bets, as we've discussed before. BTC, ETH, and then maybe some exchange coins or something. I said Solana, but Don didn't like it because the blockchain doesn't work, which is fair enough.
And then it actually stopped working again straight after, like a day or two after. No, but I mean, with regards to ETH, worst comes to worst, you just have to wait till like 2040 till the merge happens, and then it goes up, right? just given past events and like the evidence.
I'm on my deathbed, like my grandchildren hold to the merge.
My kids would be really upset because their trust funds would already be like due by then, right? Like, don't you earn into those when you become an adult? They'd be like married.
Sorry, Ledger, wouldn't know. We're not all like you.
Well, they don't actually have trust funds. I'm just thinking in a positive future, right? But yeah, I mean, I don't know. The one other element in terms of trying to capture the bottom is I'm actually trying to plan for better tax optimization for the next time that I realize gains, because I purposefully turned over my entire portfolio in 2021 and trade like crazy, which was fine and very rewarding, but it was also like a huge tax burden. And so I think if you can play with a better tax strategy, then the impact of catching like a macro bullish level is very strong, right? Like if you can, not that you have to buy the bottom, but if you can get your average price to a place and in a coin that you believe in, then the implications of that from a tax perspective can be quite good. So I'm trying to plan for my future ETH exposure in that way.
I can tell you a story about like trying to optimize your tax exposure. For some reason, I mean, I think it's a really good idea, right? But for some reason, like every time I've heard people say it, I've just seen them just completely eat shit. Because
I think they do it when they're planning it during the meat of a bull market.
Yeah.
Like,
and I mean, how it usually happens, right, is like, and this is like something that Germany is just hilarious at, because if you hold your coins for more than a year, you don't have to pay taxes, right? So what happens is during bull markets, people are like, holy shit, I made so much money. I can tell like an example of a good friend of mine, which bought this coin, right? Which is
this isn't me, just to be clear.
but yeah, he said good friend, Cred.
Yeah,
True,
I have
true,
like
true.
more than one good friend. But so he bought this for like a couple $1,000s, right? It ran up, and he had like I don't remember, but like 10 million or something in this coin. And he was like, I'm not gonna sell this because I bought this like just 6 months ago. I just have to wait 6 more months to be able to just kind of not have pay taxes for this, right? In those 6 months during that time, right, the coin went from the all-time high where begged him to sell, which was $11, all the way down to 1, right? So like, I mean, even if he paid the German taxes, which is like almost 50%, he would have been much, much better off. But it's like, this is like the meme with the tax stuff. For some reason, and maybe it's just bad luck, but every time like I hear people talk about it, it's most of the time it's during the bull market. So I think you're doing the right thing, thinking about like what to do during the bear market. But most of the time, it's just like you see that the market develops bearishly, or you see like a blow off top. You're probably better off just maximizing your gains rather than trying to minimize your taxes.
Yes, I agree. If you are owning Voyager token,
Ledger isn't good coins; they will come back.
And I mean, at the end, like I can finish the story. At the end, like it went to $1, and he was like, "Fuck no, I'm not gonna sell this. It's down 90%." And then it went to 0.1, so it was down 90% again. And then it actually rallied, and he sold some on this rally. But yeah, this is crypto. It's kind of funny seeing this echo bubble at the right side, where it's like it went from nothing to $10 to nothing. Like there's literally like almost zero down here to almost $10 again. Like this was like 100x on both sides.
Almost as much as an echo bubble as MicroStrategy, right?
Oh my gosh.
Oh, have you guys seen the chart lately? The MicroStrategy chart is insane. This is just nuts.
Now I will say, if you're very bullish Bitcoin, and also if you're confident in the GBTC conversion to an ETF, which at least from people I've heard from, there's not a great reason to be confident in that. Those discounts on GBTC are extraordinary now, like 30, 40%, something like that.
I mean, GBTC is trading at previous bull market highs, like below them, actually. You look at this, it's completely crazy, right? So this was 2017. Like compare that to, sorry for interrupting, but like compare that to how Bitcoin is trading now, which is so much higher, right? Like you look at this is basically trading at the equivalent of 11K Bitcoin back in the day.
Yeah, it's 28 to 30% on the GBTC pair right now.
Oh man,
that makes up for quite a lot of years of the 2% grayscale fee. Like if you're bullish Bitcoin, if you don't think it's going to go below more than 30% of a discount, then that's a reasonable thing to do. Nevertheless, we're 10 minutes over time, so we should probably let it go. We've done nothing but bear talk. We are once again trying to establish the bottom. Do y'all have anything to add before we go?
No, just give me a high time frame, at least weekly close. That's okay, and then I'll be right with you. Otherwise, I'm gonna chill, go to consensus, and see what projects are surviving and thriving.
Awesome.
Pretty much the same thing for me.
Excellent. Well, I hope to see you there, Cred. We'll
yes,
find
please.
out. In the meantime, thanks for being here. Thanks for FTX being our partners. Go to weeklyopen.com/FTX, where you can trade with 0 fees directly from any asset to any other asset on their platform. It's super easy. And you can DCA directly from your bank. All those good things right on FTX. weeklyopen.com/FTX. We'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.